Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Stimson Center at the conclusion of a fantastic panel discussion on building stability in the Gulf region and in Iraq. And we're honored to have with us His Excellency Dr. Farid Yasseen, who is the Ambassador of Iraq, the Republic of Iraq, to the United States. Sir, thanks for the time.
Thank you for talking to me.
It was a fascinating discussion, and we covered a lot of ground. But one of the questions that I had for you is, the relationship between the United States and Iraq is a deep one. It's going to be a lasting one for a whole variety of reasons, in part because we had a role, obviously, in the current situation that Iraq finds itself. In this relationship, what are some of the things that Iraq would like to see from the United States, whether it's in terms of military aid in the fight against ISIS, but also in the economic reconstruction that's to come, which is something that you stressed is absolutely integral for the future?
Well, look, we're very grateful for the effort that the United States is expending to help us defeat ISIS. We're on the way to doing that. But equally important will be the United States' role in helping us strengthen our institutions, maintain our forces post-ISIS. And then also to try to diversify our economy and reconstruct. And that's going to be a major, major portfolio. Many Iraqis would tell you that in the reconstruction of Iraq, we didn't see many American companies involved. In fact, that's something we would like to see change. We'd like to see American investors come in, help us, for example, develop our downstream oil sector, diversify our economy, boost our agriculture. And we do have a vehicle for that. In 2008, we signed with the United States a strategic framework agreement that talks about a long-term relationship that covers all these aspects. So we would like to put meat on these bones, if you will, and have American companies come in, provide opportunities for work and for education to Iraq. One of the nicest examples of Iraqi-American cooperation I'll mention is the American University in Iraq in Sulaymaniyah. It just got accredited by the Iraqi Ministry of Higher Education. We need more things like that. You know, I actually am a graduate of a school in Baghdad that was founded by American Jesuits. They're welcome to come back if they want.
And you did your postdoctoral work. You got your doctorate in Switzerland, but you did your postdoctoral work in physics at MIT. Not a bad school. They know a thing or two about physics.
No, they know a thing or two about everything.
One of the points you actually made was an American weapons inspector made the point to you, which I thought was fascinating, that given how successful Iraq was in developing nuclear weapons, if that could be applied to governance, that would be the key. And I want to take you to that phase of it. What are some of the challenges? You addressed the battle against corruption that's going on right now. It's a two-part question. Part one is, from an Iraq perspective, post-ISIS, you said that you think that that the war will be won soon, and that integration will go smoothly. What gives you confidence that integration will go smoothly?
Well, in a strange way, this war has brought us together. I mean, traditionally, the federal Iraqi army fought against the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces. For the first time in history, they're standing side by side, fighting a common enemy. ISIS has not killed us, but it's drawn us stronger. Strangely enough, if they had stayed their ground and stayed put in Anbar and Nainawa, we still might be in that position. But like I said, their territory has been squeezed, and in not too long, I mean, they'll be out of Mosul, and we will start the reconstruction.
From an economic standpoint, there are those in the United States who will say, well, the United States really has invested quite a lot of money, enough money in Afghanistan and in Iraq. What's the counter-argument to that? Why the United States should remain engaged? And, what is the kind of future you want to see for Iraq?
Well, a stable and prosperous Iraq is essential for the stability and the prosperity of the whole region. And more broadly, and so this is an involvement, not only an investment, but an involvement and an engagement that has implications far beyond the borders of Iraq, and a global power like the United States could not overlook this.
And how do you respond to those who say, look, Iraq made a lot of mistakes that weakened its military, that allowed some of the early challenges in the fight against ISIS? What are some of the things that the Iraqi government has done since to ensure that its military capability and its capability to fight and protect and defend its own borders are up to snuff?
Done a lot. I mean, the army that you see right now is different from the one that we had in 2014, and their performance on the ground shows it. You know, our armed forces, particularly the ICTS and the Popular Mobilization, have sustained high casualties. One of the reasons for these high casualties is that they had received instructions, which they are very, very willing to follow, to do all they can to minimize civilian casualties, even if that requires putting themselves more at risk. I mean, this is not lost on the population. And you see this in the way in Mosul people have been welcoming the soldiers and officers of the Iraqi counterterrorism service as liberators. It's really heartwarming.
You express pride that the Iraqi passport on it is written in Arabic, English, but also in Kurdish. And you are committed to a united, prosperous country. And there are two things that you're interested in, building a GI Bill and conscription. Talk to us about why you think that both of those are universal conscription, akin to what, for example, Switzerland has. Why do you see those as being the most important tools to sort of bring the country together?
Well, you know, we're going to demobilize. You're going to have a lot of soldiers who will come back with nothing to do, and it would be incumbent upon us to help them become active members of society and of the economy. And the most stellar example of this kind of transformation is to be found in the GI Bill, which, you know, took all those soldiers who came back from the Second World War. I mean, the United States started the war in 1941, ended it in 1945. That's 4 years. We started fighting ISIS in 2014. We'll probably end it in 2018, 17, 18, about the same period. So I mean, there are analogies, and really we could benefit from the kinds of things that the United States implemented to turn all its soldiers into active members of the economy. By the same token, we need to strengthen our institutions and, in particular, our armed forces, to make sure they reflect Iraqi society at large. And this is just my thinking. I mean, there are people in Iraq that are thinking about it, but it doesn't yet reflect policy. National conscription is something that is being considered as a tool not only to provide us with a national army that reflects the characteristics of the uniformly of the Iraqi population, but also as a tool of integration, of nation forming, of nation forging, of training. It's costly, but I think it's worth it.
One last question. You want to see an Iraq that is a constructive member of a broader, more stable Middle Eastern community. You elegantly answered the question when asked about, you know, the Iraqi role between Iran and the rest of the region. What is the role that Iraq, you made a joke that Iraqis make better Iranian food than Iranians do. What is the role?
That's debated. You know, the Iranians would disagree.
But what is the role of Iraq as far as you see, both in this crisis in Syria as we see it, but also in the relationship with Iran that between the United States and at least with this administration remains a little more contentious than it did perhaps for the last administration?
Look, Iraq can only thrive in a regional equilibrium, and it's not for nothing that its first international pact after it became independent under the wise guidance of King Faisal I, who, by the way, was represented in the movies by Alec Guinness, who is, the guy who actually portrayed Obi-Wan Kenobi.
One of the best movies in history, by the way, I will say, but I'm partial.
Yeah. No, it's a great movie, actually. So his first international agreement was the so-called Sadabat Pact, which it was a non-aggression pact between Iraq, Turkey, Iran, and Afghanistan. Okay, and then it was followed by the Baghdad Pact, in which Pakistan became also a member, in Jordan. So we cannot but have or seek regional equilibria that shun confrontation. Iraq under Saddam was nothing but confrontation. Look at where it got us. We want to be uniters, not dividers.
And one last question. You said that the meeting with your Prime Minister and President Trump was an extreme success. Talk to us about why that was as successful as you think it is, and why do you think that the relationship is going to be very productive as you stated it?
Well, look, I mean, we're not only partners by necessity. I think we're also partners by choice. The United States now is in Iraq training our forces at the request of the Iraqi government. And we have enemies in common that we are eager to defeat. That forges ties. And one of the really nice things about the recent visit is that the chemistry worked between the president and the prime minister. And so I'm a happy camper.
And you guys had a great meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, which you said was oversubscribed.
It was indeed. It was indeed. And like I said, this is something that we're eager to have. People in this country talk always about the pivot to Asia. I think it might be interesting for thinkers in this country to look at the pivot by Asia. Asian companies are very present in Iraq, and we'd like to have more presence of more American companies in Iraq as well, and Europeans and Turkish. And we want that kind of competition to be taking place in Iraq.
And there was no concern in Iraq back home about some of the rhetoric that has been perceived by some as anti-Muslim travel ban, etc. Has that had any implication from your standpoint at all in the relationship?
That made me lose a lot of sleep. But thank God. I mean, the truth is, putting aside the issue of the ban itself, Iraq is a country that has relationships with the United States that need to be ongoing. I mean, and a travel ban would have been quite disruptive had it been reciprocated. For example, on the Iraqi side, it would have prevented possibly contractors who play a critical role in the upkeep of our military equipment from traveling freely back and forth to Iraq. So I'm glad Iraq was excluded from the list. It sent the right kind of signal back to Baghdad that Iraq is a partner.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.